All right, just moving forward, just I want to touch on a few things you talked about, but one right now you mentioned deaths in the fiscal year of 2023. Let's just say, how many deaths did you see? Pretty much, was there an uptick into deaths, or is it slowed down? What is it for you guys right now?
So the last 3 years, 21, 22, 23, 21, we had roughly 30 deaths. In 2022, we had 70 people die in our desert. In 2023, I want to say it was 29 deaths that we've had to investigate out in the desert. 2022 was the worst I've ever seen in my career as far as recoveries of individuals out in the desert. We're still looking for a 15-year-old out in our desert right now
Just recently?
that just recently, about a month ago, that was abandoned because they were sick by the group. The problem is these groups don't report this stuff until they get to where they're wanting to go in the U.S. because these are the gotaways.
Right.
That's where we're dealing with the deaths out in the remote desert. So uh, it's not right now because of the winter time. We get a lot of winter visitors in Yuma County on top of the agricultural workers. So you get a lot of people out in the desert recreating, and that's where they end up running into these folks that have died and been left out there in the desert. So we
Yeah.
go out and recover them.
Yeah. For those who are watching or listening, a lot of illegals or migrants attempting to cross into America find themselves lost in the middle of the desert at times. They don't prepare for the weather, the conditions, and most of them die from dehydration or heat exhaustion and so on and so forth. And so it is not uncommon for you to be walking in a desert rurally and walk up either on bones at times because they've been there so long and the animals have already picked the flesh off the bones, or you find the bodies themselves. That's to include if there is river on that border. You will find what they call as floaters. Don't mean to be insensitive with that term, but that's what they've been found to have lost a footing or drowned in the Rio Grande River, and then they're found several days later, sometimes weeks later, floating in the river. And so it is not uncommon for migrants to lose their lives in the attempt of coming across. The conditions are harsh. And also, on top of the conditions, the trafficking organizations don't see them as a precious cargo. They just see them as a commodity, a way to make money. And if they're becoming a
Right.
nuisance or they're not keeping up, well, then they just leave them behind.
Well, it's important for your listeners to understand that this isn't a Mexico thing. What this is the cartels exploiting these individuals. I mean, we've seen upwards of 160 different countries coming into Yuma County. I want to say 2022, 310,000 apprehensions, and those were give ups.
What are
Just
the
in Yuma on my border,
Yeah? What countries?
310,000.
Give me some of those countries that maybe the average person would not expect.
So Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, I mean, you name it. If there's a country, there's only 200 and some odd recognized countries, according to the United Nations. We've had 160 of them here. Senegal,
Yeah, I mean, a lot
pick
of
a
those,
country.
right? A lot of those countries that we know have terrorist threats towards America or don't see this country in a fair light, and so that becomes a concern for some of the American people, knowing that those type of individuals or those countries that are so far away. I find it fascinating, how much it would probably cost just for them to travel to the Mexican border, to the U.S. Mexican border, and then to attempt to
Mhm.
cross illegally. That raises a concern for a lot of people.
Well, and it does for us from a law enforcement perspective. We've seen what happened in 9/11. I mean, everybody is well aware of how that went down. And when you're dealing with that many countries, especially those that are special interest countries that don't want to cooperate with the United States, you're not going to get the criminal background from that country on any of these individuals. And ergo, part of the problem is like this current administration changing all the policies. I can go down to the border right now. I've picked up passports, I've picked up identification cards that they've dumped on the river and their money from their countries because they know that when they get here, the United States, because of sanctuary cities advertising, that's where they're going to go because they're told they're going to get health care, they're going to get fed, they're going to get clothing. So that's the draw. I mean, you don't have to be a border czar to understand if you're going to offer something free, they're coming. And New York's finally starting to see that, as well as other states that have decided that they were going to be sanctuary cities. And now those people in those communities have to pay that bill.
Well, Sheriff, what's your
We're
what?
not a sanctuary city.
No, I 100% understand that. But what's your opinion on people who are trying to come to America or who are seeking asylum? Those individuals who genuinely are escaping persecution or fear of their own country.
You know, the legitimate ones, from what we understand from this administration at this point in time, from what they have seen, I believe it's only 1 in 8 that actually have a legitimate asylum claim. These are the give ups that have entered the country illegally between a port of entry. There are so many folks that are sitting on the other side of the border right now that are doing it the legal way. But because folks have entered illegally and been granted access, they're finding it a lot quicker to get into the country that way. And they won't have a hearing scheduled now till 10, 11 years from now in
Correct.
regards to their asylum claim. So in the meantime, they're going to be in communities, and most of them are going to the mid part of the country and to the northeast. That's where the majority are. Interesting when you talk to them, New York, Chicago, Sacramento, LA, and some of those are the Russians. At one time, we were getting 70 Russians a day in Yuma. Right now, you're seeing an uptick in Chinese. Those are coming across right now. Um, for Yuma County, just to give you an idea, at one time we were like Tucson is now. We were getting upwards of 12 to 1,600 apprehensions a day just along the river corridor. And then the problem was the getaways. And that's a concern for us and law enforcement is who are these people? What country are they from? And what are their intentions and where are they going into this country?
Correct. So those of you who are
And
listening on
that's our concern.
just to clarity for those who are listening and watching, a gotaway, it is not an exact science. What happens is an agent would probably see footprints on the ground that someone who has entered into our country, whether it be by river, by jumping a fence, whatever case may be, and then you make a determination of the foot pattern, whether it be 4, 3, 6, 10 people. And as you've tracked that person or those that body of footprints all the way up to say a road, and you don't see those footprints cross that road, well, then it's under our assumption that they've been picked up and they will be now labeled as gotaways. So it's not an exact science, but the number is shocking at how many gotaways have been listed in recent years.